It's really wonderful to welcome Russell Pascoe, who's the composer, Tony Pinching, the librettist, Gary Cole, the record producer, and our own Chris Gray, who conducted this amazing moment, amazing piece of music, and our own choirs who are standing behind me here. This CD is perhaps one of the most ambitious recording projects ever undertaken by a cathedral choir. We should feel proud that this originated in Cornwall with the music of our very own Cornish treasure, Russell Pascoe. I wasn't here in May, but it must have been absolutely wonderful to have 64 members of the BBC National Orchestra of Wales come here, along with those renowned soloists, Catherine Wyn-Rogers and Julian Van Mellerts. And I really do want to pay tribute to the hard work of the boys and the girls and the back row of our choirs who worked intensely over 2 days to achieve this recording. And so we meet here to mark the launch of this important recording, which we hope will travel far and wide, not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally as well. I do hope you have a most wonderful evening. I do hope that we run out of CDs on the CD stall over there. Please do enjoy your time with us this evening. Thank you.
Countries, so it really is an international thing originating here, ultimately in the brain of Russell, but then also in the work of the choir and so many others. So we're going to listen to a little excerpt from it's about three and a half minutes worth from towards the end of the Requiem. And the Requiem goes on a journey which gets very dark. And one of the things that I like about it is its honesty, because there are some times in our life we do feel that there's no hope. And we're at rock bottom, and the vividness with which the words and the music acknowledge that are quite unusual, a bit like this sound system. So the little section we're going to listen to goes like this: Praised be the fathomless universe for life and joy, and for objects and knowledge curious, and for love, sweet love. But praise, praise, praise for the sure enwinding arms of cool enfolding death. That's the first listen to one of the movements. I'm going to ask Russell and Tony just to say a word or two about the genesis of the Requiem, how it came about. Would you like to do that, gents?
Yes.
That's good.
Go on. First of all, thank you so much for coming tonight to help us celebrate this. When Acting Dean Simon started, I wanted to do an Uggy, 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 because it's a wonderful Cornish meeting tonight. This is something that I wanted to write for at least 20 years. I love requiems. I love the requiems by Fauré, recently Duruflé, Verdi, Mozart, all them. But I wanted to write something that was for people who didn't necessarily hold with the Dies Irae and the Day of Judgment and all the people being damned and all that. And Fauré, in his Requiem, he wasn't too keen on that bit either. So the idea was there. With this echo, it's a little bit tricky hearing what I'm saying. Is it? I get easily bored by myself. That's better. That's better. So what I wanted to do was write a piece which used world poetry, which would be inclusive of those who have a faith and those who don't. And there were certain things, I have a big thing about including everyone in everything. So I wanted to start off with No Man is an Island, but after that I really wasn't too sure what I wanted to have. There were some other ideas, and then Gordon Jackson introduced me to Tony Pinching, and over to Tony Pinching, which is how the way it went at the time.
Well, I'm probably one of the few people working in Cornwall who'd not met Russell, but when I did, we spent a very vertiginous evening for about 3 hours in Vertigo, discussing music and creativity, and in particular I wanted to know what sort of poetry he wanted to set. And in the following weeks I kept sort of sending him poems that I'd read, part of them prompted by a performance actually here of Towards Silence by John Taverner with my dear friend Paul Robertson and several other string players. So I was already, in a sense, exploring the ideas of death and preparation for death and what does it signify. And so I kept bunging these poems over to Russell, and eventually he said, well, why don't I do the notes and you do the words? And so that's how it worked out. It proved challenging, I think, to find something where there was no requirement in the poetry for a particular faith. That's not to say there wasn't faith within the poet, but it was not a requirement in the poem, so that it could be received by anybody without a requirement of a particular belief. And then finding a structure which would work and which would capture these many different ways of responding to death, I realized that a rough concept based around the stages of grief, of denial, of bargaining, of anger, of depression, and eventually in a sort of accommodation. And different people go through these at different stages in relation to loss. But I found that each of the poems that we were looking at seemed to have a home in those sort of that sequence of responses to death and to loss. And that's essentially how we came together. And then thousands of poems on the cutting room floor eventually got down to a short list. And Russell then got around to the job of setting them. It was magical to hear how these poems from many different poets and cultures turned into something altogether at a different level with Russell's music. Very special.
Thank you. All right. Very good.
So we're going to sing a an item from the disc live for you now, and it's quite special this because it's in a new version. So originally the opening of the Requiem is scored for the whole orchestra and choir, but Russell has subsequently made an arrangement for percussion and choir and organ. So we're going to give that its first outing tonight. Just the first movement, it's probably around 5 minutes of music. And it's a setting of John Donne's poem, No Man is an Island. And I think this is a wonderful place to start and very true to who Russell is, the idea of community. No man is an island. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away, Europe is the less. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. And then the chilling ending. Never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. And I'm grateful for Ross, James and Patrick coming in to play percussion, as well as my colleague Andrew on the organ. Thank you. One final little piece of that puzzle of how it started is that it was a commission by Three Spires Singers, and Three Spires Singers gave the first performance here in the cathedral in, was it 2013? 2013, and then we all went to the Cadogan Hall in London to give it its second performance, and we gave it a third outing a few months ago. So it's a piece that we really love and we're very proud to have commissioned with my musical director of Three Spires Singers hat on. We have with us Gary Cole, who is the record producer. He also owns Regent Records, and he's here with his wife Pippa today. We're very grateful to you both for coming down, Gary. I'd like to ask Gary to say a few words about the significance of this project and where it sits in what he's done. Gary has recorded most of the big kind of choirs of our kind and is widely regarded to be one of the very best in the business, sparing his blushes. Gary, would you like to say a word or two?
Thank you. Well, I've had a career as a full-time record producer now for 35 years, and I've recorded lots of recordings with orchestras, with choirs, and orchestras with choirs. But what is so marvellous about this project is that it's the largest project ever undertaken by a cathedral choir. And it is the largest project because there have been recordings from cathedral choirs with smaller orchestras, but generally of standard repertoire. That has been music that has been in the repertoire for a long time, but this is the first recording of a major, and it really is a major, new choral work that has involved a cathedral choir and one of the most important symphony orchestras in the country, the BBC National Orchestra of Wales. And I've worked here at Truro now for probably nearly 20 years. I think I started coming here when Chris was the assistant organist, and it's been fantastic to come virtually every year, I think, until COVID hit, to come here to do a recording with the choir. Now, this isn't the first project that Chris and the choir have done with the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, but it is the first project to record such a large-scale new contemporary work. And I've been absolutely delighted to be involved with this project as the producer. Now, the first question people ask is, what does the producer do? On this recording, well, on all recordings, I sit down in the crypt at a table, being bought constant and copious cups of tea and biscuits, and either by myself, if it's a smaller scale project, I set up the microphones to record the choir. But for this project, because of the large scale of it, I used a very well-known engineer called David Hynett. And we were both downstairs, and I listened to the choir sing and the orchestra playing, and tell Chris when it's time to go for a take, so that then Chris starts conducting and the choir sing and the orchestra plays. And then if there's something in that that I don't like or think, oh, I think that could be better, I stop everybody. I say, stop. Everybody stops playing and singing. And then I say, at bar 26, could we be a little bit more together? Of course, the choir and orchestra are nearly perfect, so I'm really only nitpicking on the smallest of details in the performance. But we have a very intense, we had three sessions, Friday night, Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, three very intense sessions where we worked through this piece, and we worked through generally in small sections. And my job as the producer is to make sure we get everything covered to a standard that Chris is going to be happy with. And then I take it all away, and in my studio I then join all the bits together, and you have the finished recording. A live performance often is absolutely fantastic and could go onto a CD, but when you come to do studio sessions, you tend to work at little details that perhaps would not be noticed in a live performance. So that's my job as a producer. Over the last 35 years, I've made about 850 commercial CD releases, not only for my own label, Regent Records, but for most of the large classical labels, and worked with most of the best-known choirs and orchestras. But this was such a marvellous project to do, so thank you, Chris, for asking me to do it. And thank you, Russell, for writing it with Tony. And I think we need to congratulate the fantastic Truro Cathedral Choir, the boys, girls and lay clerks, for their fantastic focus and dedication during the recording sessions, because it's not easy, is it? I'm sure you would agree. It's not easy to have a 3-hour recording session with only a 20-minute break in the middle, and all of that 3 hours you're working absolutely to top peak performance. So it's quite tiring, but thank you all so much for your work and efforts during the recording sessions. I'd like to say there's one other thing that's quite extraordinary about this project, in that often cathedral choirs, because the cathedrals are open during the day, can only record in the evening. But when you've got a massive project like this that involves the full forces of the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, that creates a lot of logistical difficulties of how you're going to have the sessions to do that. And I would like to express my gratitude to the chapter of Truro Cathedral for allowing the project to go ahead, and not only allowing it to go ahead, but also closing the cathedral during Friday afternoon and Friday early evening, and then all day Saturday for the recording to take place. The statutory services did still take place in St Mary's Aisle downstairs, so they weren't saying we're not going to do the services. The services did take place, but I am so grateful to the chapter for allowing the project to go ahead. Now, the CD recording is available from all the normal outlets, but you may be interested to know the biggest online merchant in this country, no names, runs their computers decide where a particular recording should be in their rating depending on how many people have bought the recording that hour, and it changes every hour. Now, the algorithms of this online shopping behemoth don't usually get the right decision of where the recording should be. Now, I have in the past had a Christmas Carol disc that was #1 in sales in Requiems. It wasn't actually in the Christmas Carol section, it was in Requiems. Now, for some reason that we'll try and put right, this shopping outlet has not put the secular Requiem into Requiems, where it would have easily have been #1 for the last week. But they put it into the section Madrigals. And if you know what madrigals are, sung by a group of singers, usually very frivolous, some serious ones, but usually very frivolous. And for the last week, it has been #1 in madrigals. So congratulations, Russell, on being #1 in madrigals. But you can tell how good their systems algorithms are, that of the top 10 recordings in madrigals, only 4 are actually recordings of madrigals. The other 6 recordings in the top 10 are actually choral works, and there's a recording of Bach Masses, which is only #5, you'll be pleased to know. Yes, so we can't really take much notice of the ratings from that. But every week around this time, and I've just got to check that we're after 6 o'clock now. Yes, we are, 4 minutes past 6. We are. My wife is over there and she's signaling to me. New recordings of all types, pop, jazz, classical, are rated according to the classical charts. And every week at 6 o'clock, they announce the results of where the recordings are in the rankings. and there is a section called the Specialist Classical Charts. Now, the top band of that classical charts tends to be saturated by the same recordings week and week after week, and it's impossible for a new entry to get in even at the top 10. But I am delighted to say that the highest new entry in the classical charts this week is Russell Pascoe's secular record. It has gone in the charts, new entry. It is the highest new entry this week, and it has gone in at number 5. Not number 10 or 20 or 30 or 50. It goes from 1 to 50. Number 5. So I think that is an absolutely fantastic achievement. Now you might say, what are the recordings that are wonderful? Well, they're solid recordings that tend to be the same recordings week after week after week, because they're popular classical artists that I'm sure you've heard of. You know, like the Three Tenors could be number 1 in the classical charts for permanently. But I think I've come to the end of what I want to say, so there you are. I hope you're pleased with that news.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And we're going to listen to one more item from the disc now. This is really interesting because there's humour in it, which of course there often is close to death. Russell, would you like to just say a word about cats and cakes before we listen to it?
Yes. I always think that humour is, you need humour. And I think the reason that I wanted, and Tony will remember this, I wanted this poem, was written by Stephen Anderton, a friend of mine, in it, because quite often, even with death, there is humour. And at a funeral, people will band together and come out with stories and have just a kind of break the atmosphere laugh. And as Chris said, there are points in the Requiem which are really very, very sad and tragic. And it's like in Shakespeare, where he'll have the fool or the gatekeeper or someone who just breaks the spell of where, you know, and you have a jolly good laugh, and then it's straight after that someone gets murdered or the real crux of the story comes. So I wanted people to just relax and have a laugh, and then we go into rather a profound poem, the Tagore, yeah.
And this is, I think, showing that one of the remarkable things about this Requiem is the sheer variety of the musical style in it. You can listen to it for its 45 or 50 minutes and it's endlessly varied and interesting. This is got a bit of Tom and Jerry in it, really. I'm going to read you a little bit of the text because it's very hard to hear. It's much better when you buy the disc. But on this sound system, the words are very unclear. So I'll read you. This is Catherine Wynne Rogers, one of the very best singers in this country. She recorded with us, I think, was it the day after she finished a run at Covent Garden of some Benjamin Britten. The words: I hadn't time to clear the decks, to put in order my effects. And now I'm gone and whisked away. I hadn't even time to say, please don't forget to feed the cat. So she's obsessed with feeding the cat. She thinks her husband's going to forget to feed the blooming cat. And at the very end, she says this: and last of all, oh God, I should have said, they're in the oven. Cakes, the cakes, the cakes. And don't forget to feed the cat.
I hadn't time to clear the decks, to put in order my effects, and now I'm gone and whisked away. I hadn't not even time to say, please don't forget to feed the cat. 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 The bonds, the deeds, the unpaid bills, and somewhere heaven knows a will. I know there'll be so much to do. I wish it didn't fall on you. Still don't forget to feed the cat. 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 Have the desk, it's fin de siècle. Take the clock, it's set it as I wind. The Horace Sally's chairs to win, but piles of it are only fit to tip into a skip, unless you take the best to charity. Faded letters dating back, Marrakesh, you remember that? Tied with ribbon, well, why not? They're yours again, the whole damn lot. Enjoy, enjoy, but don't forget to feed the cat. Don't forget to feed the cat. Where will she be? Where will she be? Prowling out in the town. Where will she be? Where will she be? Prowling out in the town. But morning she'll be back, you see. But morning she'll be back, you see. On the mat, or snuggled in my old straw hat. Oh no, no, stuck in that wretched flap. And lost of all. Oh God, I should have said. Oh God, I should have said. They're in the oven. They're in the oven. Cakes, the cakes, the cakes, the cakes, the cakes, the cakes, the cakes. And don't forget to feed the cat.
And that is what it's like, isn't it? The emotions that just come to you. This poem I find quite a personal resonance with. My grandparents were married for 63 years. They're both dead now. My grandmother passed away, and then of course my grandfather wasn't long after, and that was always going to be the way. And that's what this poem's about. It's about the last rose of summer. And it ends with the question, who would inhabit this bleak world alone? The idea that when your mates of the garden lie scentless and dead, who wants to be that remaining rose? I'll just read you a little bit of these words. "'Tis the last rose of summer left blooming alone. All her lovely companions are faded and gone. No flower of her kindred, no rosebud is nigh, to reflect back her blushes and give sigh for sigh.
I'll not leave thee, thou lone one, to pine on the stem. Since the lovely are sleeping, go sleep thou with them. Thus kindly I scatter thy leaves o'er the bed, where thy mates of the garden lie scentless and dead. So soon may I follow when friendships decay, and from love's shining circle the gems drop away. When true hearts lie withered and fond ones are flown, oh, who would inhabit this bleak world alone? And it's the most beautiful folk song type setting that Russell's made of that, with a baritone solo. And then the cats and cakes. And so I would encourage you not just to dip into this, but to listen to the whole journey, because it really does, it's even greater than the sum of its parts. I should just acknowledge a debt of gratitude to the people who donated on the GoFundMe page. This is a very expensive project, don't tell the Dean. The cathedral didn't pay a penny for it, I should say, but it was nonetheless expensive, and it wouldn't have happened without a lot of people's generosity. We're going to finish before you buy your CDs. Oh, there is a Last Rose of Summer on the cover of the CD. You'll recognise it when you buy it. The thing we're going to end with is the Cathedral Choir singing a piece that we commissioned in 2018 for the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. This is another collaboration between Tony and Russell, and it's an 18-minute sequence, very, very powerful. Some of you will have been here. The cathedral was packed for that service when we premiered all three of these anthems. Very powerful stuff. We're going to sing Reconciliation. I'll just read you these very moving words, and this will be our final item for the... Have I forgotten anything, or is that... This is our final item for the evening. These are words by Siegfried Sassoon. When you are standing at your hero's grave, or near some homeless village where he died, remember through your heart's rekindling pride the German soldiers who were loyal and brave. Men fought like brutes, and hideous things were done, and you have nourished hatred harsh and blind. But in that Golgotha, perhaps you'll find the mothers of the men who killed your son.
Oh,
I just wanted to say a big thank you to the GoFundMe sponsors who, fantastic, this has cost a lot of money and it's your help and generosity that have got this going, so thank you so much for what you did. Also thank you to Three Spires for letting this work be written in the first place and embracing it and giving 3 performances of it, and thanks to my friend Victoria who helped with the original commission, Professor Pinching, who's here, I look around for, who helped with it, and of course Mr. John Ridger who died a few years ago. But I would just like to say the work is dedicated to my dear friend Chris. Thank you, Chris. Oh, lovely. Oh, beauty. Oh, dear.
Thank you, Russell, thank you. Folks, there is fizz available in the chapter house. If you're able to stay, you'd be very welcome to join us for that. Otherwise, there's a rehearsal starting here in 15 minutes for the concert tomorrow. You're welcome to stay for a little bit, but maybe towards the sort of door end of things for the next 10 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Drinks there and then up the rising sun.
Right. Thank you very much, folks. If you want to just make your way downstairs, see you tomorrow, or whenever it is, Sunday.
Oh,
just walk at us. Maybe I'll go first, shall I? Shall I just walk?
Oh my God, no, I didn't. I didn't.
Let's go nice and steady, steady.
Hold it together, Russell.
Oh dear.
I need a picture of you.